Hello and welcome to the BloodStream podcast, a show serving the greater bleeding disorders community, brought to you by Believe Limited and BloodStream Media, and made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. I'm your patient advocate and host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I'm your healthcare advocate, nonprofit nerd, and your other host, Amy Board, reminding you to please speak with a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
On today's show, we have ASH 2025 highlights with the renowned global hematologist living here in Southern California,
Yes.
Dr. Akshat Jain.
Yes!
We have got him and more on today's episode. Welcome to BloodStream.
Listeners, as always, thank you for joining us today. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the BloodStream podcast wherever you get those podcasts. We'll accept anything, any click.
We will, any click from wherever you can click us, we will accept it. And I also want to remind you, dear listeners, that the BloodStream podcast is made possible by our presenting sponsor, Takeda.
Takeda.
Yes, that's right, Takeda. Takeda believes in a world free of bleeds.
Yes.
How about that? And they are dedicated more than ever in their efforts to offer a wide range of resources to help patients throughout their treatment journey, wherever on that journey they may be. And you can learn more by simply visiting bleedingdisorders.com. One more time while my screen is freaking out. That's bleedingdisorders.com. And for their founding and ongoing support of the BloodStream podcast, I would just like to say, thanks, Takeda.
Thanks, Takeda. I wondered if you had it memorized.
I basically do, but
What happened to
golly
your computer?
Gee, you know, you'd think I haven't used one of these in a while, but I guess I have too many tabs open. Too many tabs.
We should count our tabs. I have so many tabs.
Okay, yeah.
Are you a tabber? I'm a tabber.
I try not to be. It sounds like you've committed to it as a way of life.
Well, here's my thing. If I don't have it open in tabs, I won't do it. So if it closes in tabs, it's closed from my to-do list. And I realize that's psychotic, but that's my whole thing.
Wow. See, I use different devices.
So many tabs, you guys.
Oh, she's showing it off.
I have so many tabs.
You do have a lot of tabs. So is that's a standard amount of tabs for you?
This is a high amount of tabs for me.
It's a high amount.
Today has been Looney Tunes.
Okay. Well, you win. You're the winner of the tabs game.
Yes.
Haven't seen you in a week because I was not in this country.
I know. I wondered if we were going to talk about it, but I can't wait to hear you. Now, this is just a little tease, everybody. Just a little tease. I don't know if Patrick can say a whole lot, but you were filming a documentary in Nigeria this past week.
We were.
With the hemophilia community.
Yeah, so the executive director and founder of the Hemophilia Foundation of Nigeria, Megan Adidaran, has this new initiative that I posted about on social media for those that follow called Road to Clot, bringing diagnosis to the people. She has 3 vans that have been, for lack of a better way to put it, souped up to be these mobile diagnoses vans. And she's begun these outreach days where she's doing education on signs and symptoms of a bleeding disorder, then having people who are self-identifying as experiencing signs or symptoms step forward and get assessed. They have hematologists on hand. And then those who, quote unquote, qualify actually move forward to get blood drawn to see if they have hemophilia A or B. So we were a part of her first mobile outreach day. About 100 people showed up for her education. And about 15 of those people got their blood drawn, and at least a couple of them whose stories we came to know a little bit, I will be surprised if they don't have hemophilia.
It's just crazy. And diagnosis obviously is like, there are massive issues, you know, in Africa and Nigeria in particular, but diagnoses in particular in rural areas is just very, very difficult. Is that correct?
Yeah, practically speaking, people live far away from diagnosing hospitals, so the logistical, economic realities of taking time off of work or away from school to actually go and get tested.
Yeah.
And that's if people have inherent cultural trust in the healthcare system. So you're also battling with certain cultural stigmas and mistrust. So, you know, Megan's concept of let's get out of the clinics and out of the hospitals and go to the people, meet them where they're already gathering. The gathering last week was held outside of a local church, and an announcement about it was made during services at that church. So it's really a grassroots community-led effort that's from the people to reach the people where they're already going.
It just sounds, I mean, you know, We've done a lot of work in a lot of communities, and I don't know, just hearing about your time and what was captured there just sounded so special. I mean, you've been in this community your entire life. Like, how did it stand apart, I guess?
How did it stand apart? Well, something that has been clear to me since we started doing this work about 10 plus years ago and traveling around the world and meeting people in the community in different parts of the world, in different health systems, in different cultural situations. There's so often where there is success, there is the power of one comes to mind. Because yes, it takes a village, but so often there's one individual who's a real anchor for a foundation or a patient organization, or even at the scale of the World Federation. I think of Assad Hafar and the humanitarian aid program.
Yes.
Yes, it's a program. Yes, there's a staff. Yes, it's more than one person. But that one person, that anchor is, I don't know, I hesitate to say he's everything, but I mean, what he does is extraordinary. What Megan does for the Hemophilia Foundation of Nigeria is extraordinary. And she is just one person. As she herself says, I'm a 5'2" woman.
I know.
And how do I expect people to listen to me? And what she's accomplished is hopefully empowering. One of the things I hope this film does is help people all around the world realize just how much you're capable of if you really, truly commit. Because she has done everything she has done through a passionate commitment to progress against all odds in a very under-resourced part of the world. And just in the week we were with her to watch how she operates, how she advocates, how she gets what she needs and just makes things happen. That tenacity it's everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, very excited about the project, how it stands apart. It feels like the culmination of a lot of our work in many ways to me. One thing, though, that it's funny, like hemophilia is hemophilia is hemophilia. During Megan's formal presentation on this outreach day, about 50 yards across from me was this boy wearing blue, sitting facing my direction. And at some point during the presentation, he rolled up his pant leg and he rubbed his knee. And the moment I saw his knee, I told Rob on the camera, I was like, that boy has hemophilia. But the fact he was there, like his 8 years of life, his family's just wondered what's wrong with him. Maybe people have said to the family, he's cursed, he's just cursed, or they've blamed, to now actually know what it is, to be connected to care, to have a name and a treatment protocol. I'm excited for him. He had hemophilia before last Wednesday, but hopefully since last Wednesday, he actually has a path forward in his life. But it was amazing just to see the knee and be like, oh, that's a hemophilia knee. I recognize that knee. It doesn't matter where in the world you are. That is a hemophilia knee. I can diagnose him. We can save the blood test. Put away the assays. That kid has hemophilia.
Oh my gosh. Now, do you get to go back and see? I mean, because you didn't really see if that kid had was actually tested positively for hemophilia A or B. Is that right?
We were just there when the actual blood draws took place. Okay. So they have to be processed and assessed, and that takes time. But to answer your question, unlike most of our international projects where we go somewhere, we film, we come back, and what we got is what we got.
Right.
We are planning to go back in November for a part 2, which means we'll get to follow up with patients that we met on that outreach day, as well as follow up with Megan and the folks from the Hemophilia Foundation of Nigeria who we came to meet and get to know.
Yeah.
We get to go back and go a little deeper into their stories and go into their home lives a bit more. So just a tremendous project. Still not adjusted to the time. It feels like my body still does not know what time to wake up or go to bed. But
Patrick might fall asleep in the middle of this episode.
I seem a little off. I am. But it was a great trip. An absolutely great trip.
That's so great. Thanks for sharing. Obvi, thanks for sharing. But that's exciting. And when can folks see the documentary? Do we know?
It'll be 2027. There will likely be some big announcements Well, there will be announcements coming later this year, and we'll, of course, pull them all through here on BloodStream.
Okay. All right. Stay tuned, folks.
But segment-wise, so what do we got today in store for us?
Oh, my gosh. Y'all, it seems like this is like a bit of a recurring segment now at this point.
It's kind of becoming that.
I think it's been the past 2 years we've had Dr. Jain on to speak about ASH and ASH highlights. For those of you who are new to the podcast or maybe newer to the community, ASH stands for and correct me if I'm wrong, the American Society of Hematologists.
Nailed it. Hematology. Hematology. I preemptively.
Crap.
Yeah.
You're right. It's not hematologists. It's not like.
That's who's there.
That's who's there.
Yeah.
But hematology. But anyway, it's a huge meeting. It's always at the end of the year. It's in December, and it's a pivotal meeting in data, in research coming out, what's kind of the new scuttlebutt, what everyone is talking about. A lot of results, really get ramped up to be presented at ASH. And Dr. Jain joins us. He's done it now for the past 2 years to give us his highlights from a bleeding disorder perspective, which is really fantastic. ASH has now very much expanded to oncology as well as hematology. So to have a physician come on and speak specifically about bleeding disorder, data that came out, what the nerds are talking about, it's very exciting. So anyway, let's get into my conversation with Dr. Jain. All right, everybody, we're going to talk ASH 2025 highlights with the man, the myth, the legend. Dr. Jain is back with us to talk about ASH. We're so excited. Thank you so much for being here again. And just as a tidbit and a reminder, I guess, why do you think it's important for patients and caregivers and listeners of the BloodStream podcast to know what happened at ASH? Why is it a big deal? And also, how are you doing?
Amy, I'm doing fabulous. My mind is oversaturated with information that has come out of ASH, which is by default an indicator that it was a successful meeting. Uh, and it's such an amazing question, just because ASH finds itself catering to a lot of audience that is in the field of hematology, a majority of which are clinicians, researchers presenting their work, and just a knowledge exchange. But the patient advocacy, the patient population, advocates, etc., is usually missing. And I would really love for ASH to have like an inclusion in a way where a lot of patients who don't get enough credit are very smart and savvy, sometimes more than I am, when it comes to hemophilia and sickle cell disease and hematology in general, because they have a skin in the game. They are either patients or have are caregivers of patients. So that's why it's important that we bring a culmination, a summary, a crystallization, if you may, of what appealed to me and clinicians like me at such a huge congregation of hematology research, because it shows us where we are and what's going to be coming to the field in the next 5 to 10 years that directly impacts patient care. So, this is a lovely time to be talking about the meeting and what came out of the meeting and how it impacts us in the trenches.
I agree with you. I agree. It's such a partnership, and we thank you for taking the time to meet with us every year and to tell us, to kind of disseminate, some of the data and some of the big highlights that came out of the meeting. I think from my chair, one of the biggest stories coming out of ASH 2025 in bleeding disorders was new data about hemophilia therapies. And I wondered from your chair, what was the most compelling clinical results for hemophilia A and B, real world investigational therapies? What were some of the things that came out of ASH?
Yeah, if I want to summarize hemophilia from ASH or where we are in 2026, I like to call it, we have entered an age of the pens.
Yes, that's the first. That's so. I'm going to take that. That's great. We have entered the age of the pens. And explain what that means. Explain what that means for our listeners.
It's not just because of the pen devices that have
Right.
made the life of hemophilia patients light years easy.
Right.
Also, it's not just one or two, it's multiple options. And each option with each pen device works differently, or, in the realm of non factor therapies or rebalancing agents. And there is a right patient for each pen. And at the meeting, we heard about maybe 3 new assets or 3 new products that are likely going to hit the market very soon, which are again going to be disseminated in the pen device format. So just think about, I don't know, 2 years ago, pre-pen era and now the pen era. And certainly I can speak for myself in our hemophilia treatment center, my patients, one of the largest, we are one of the largest prescribers of these novel rebalancing agents, marstacimab, and the others, concizumab and fitusiran, which patients are trying to understand and getting onboarded. But the idea of how much easier it has come from the time when I remember, about, I don't know, 2 decades ago when I started doing hemophilia, where it was okay. Here's the biggest thing at ASH that came out is this factor product that, oh, you don't have to infuse every day, but maybe every other day. So from, yeah, I don't know, 96 infusions in a year, 100 and some infusions a year, to, I don't know, less than 40 or less than 50 injections a year from a pen device, which is so convenient. I think that is really the messaging, or at least how I crystallize it in my head. Now, there are nuances, discovery comes with a price, right?
Mm.
And then the price is, hey, this is something new, and a lot of new things hit at the same time. So we gotta have to take a step back and a logical approach in understanding each of these therapies and how they're developing, and how we put them into the paradigm of selecting the right patient, or the right option for the right patient. A 20-year-old in college, a pen device may work very differently to his or her needs versus somebody who's, I don't know, a 13-year-old boy who's just getting into or starting his teenage years, versus a 70-year-old male who's done all hemophilias, who've seen it all, and has new priorities in life. So I think just talking to hemophilia alone, I think we've entered the age of pens. Then sickle cell disease and thalassemia, there are a lot of new things on hemoglobinopathies that came out. And I think, the way I, again, like to crystallize or summarize in my head is we are entering the age of gene therapy 2.0. We've had gene therapies that we have successfully utilized in the post FDA approval era for the last 2 years successfully in a lot of patients around the world. But there have been very important real life challenges. But now, with the next generation gene therapy approaches that are coming, it's just going to refine the therapy, make it more accessible. And then von Willebrand disease, I mean, the meeting was finally, there was some justice done to the most common bleeding disorder known to mankind. I mean, incidence of hemophilia is 1 in 15 to 20,000. Incidence of von Willebrand is 1 to 500. I mean, it's much, much more prevalent, under recognized. So there's so much on that, and identifying how to diagnose von Willebrand better with
Mm.
new technology, and how to treat it better conveniently without having to go through the 80 years development cycle of what hemophilia went through. So it was packed, and I'm just gonna pause here because I can keep talking.
I know. I have like from that paragraph, I have like 3 follow-up questions. I'm going to start with the last point that you made about von Willebrand's disease. So exciting to finally have something to talk about when it comes to von Willebrand disease. What was the most exciting conversations that you had? We had some early clinical data that was presented with this new novel therapy for VWD. What was most exciting? What are you most intrigued by in the conversation about von Willebrand's disease?
Yeah, I mean, shameless plug here. One of our studies, the Will
Yeah.
30 study we presented, and I've talked about that in many podcasts, since ASH, which was understanding how to treat von Willebrand disease in kids under age 6. So pediatric von Willebrand disease. I mean, we are fighting this uphill battle of identifying the right patient in the community, and many a times those strategies are now directed towards women of childbearing age, women who are perimenopausal, and rightfully so, because that's how long it takes to diagnose people
To get a
appropriately.
diagnosis. Yeah.
Exactly. But to move the needle forward, how do we diagnose them early? And
Mm.
yes, once we diagnose them early under age 6, especially the severe von Willebrand patients, type 2s and type 3s,
Hmm.
how to treat them? There is no guideline. There are no well done, or were no well done studies looking at factors that we have available in the market and their pharmacokinetic profile. How to scientifically understand what is the right dose, right frequency. So our Will 33 study using Vilate in children under age 6 was a multi-center prospective study that looked specifically at pharmacokinetic profile in von Willebrand patients, young patients under age 6, not just North America, but four continents. So Russia, Ukraine, South America, Latin America, North and South, America, and the Asias. Patients from all these regions were represented in this study. So a truly global,
Right.
uh, well done study, first of its kind, understanding, and then that data was presented at ASH and was really very well received. And now we have something in print, in guidelines. So when I do think about a 2-year-old with type 3 von Willebrand disease that comes to us, we have a reference point of
Mm.
what to do without having to worry about, hey, if you're correcting one Willebrand, is the factor 8 going to go too high and increase the risk of thrombosis, and other practical measures around that time. And I think that was certainly important in how it helps in the real world in patients that we are seeing with this new movement of diagnosing patients early on with a bleeding disorder, as opposed to, identifying them when the worst has happened and then quarterbacking it, kind of thing. So that was that. I mean, certainly, again, a shameless plug, but I think it was very relevant to what we do.
Mm.
Not just States audience, but globally, anybody who's thinking about von Willebrand disease and both genders.
Right.
But coming to your question about specifically about novel therapies, I think the subcutaneous therapy revolution. Again, I'm not going to use the pen yet because we don't know if it's going to be in a pen device or not. But the subcutaneous therapy revolution, I think, is coming for von Willebrand disease.
Mm.
I call it a revolution because yet far, even with therapy options we have, it's intravenous therapies.
Right.
Frequency of those therapies could be infusions 2 3 times a week, and sometimes still deal with issues like iron deficiency anemia in bleeding disorders like von Willebrand, factor 13 deficiency, factor 7 deficiency, those other bleeding disorders that don't usually get talked about because we're so focused on hemophilia. I think getting the traction back and saying, you know what, there is a sizable amount of people that we are now diagnosing correctly, and they deserve the same therapeutic advances that have hit hemophilia to translate in real time as opposed to have a lag 10, 20 years down the line. So subcutaneous devices that can be used once or twice a month for one Willebrand patients that increase the thrombin generation and thereby reduce bleeding, not just systemic bleeding in the muscles and joints, but also mucosal bleeding, which really is what leads to secondary effects of one Willebrand, like iron deficiency anemia, weakness, tiredness, fatigue, and impacts quality of life in the real sense. So having, I think, HEMAP and then Starter Therapeutics coming with and sharing the data of safety and also assessing, presenting some early preliminary data of impact and efficacy, hopefully in the prospective, laid the foundation of prospective data that we should be looking forward to in the future meetings about these options coming and a timeline of when they will be coming to market. Pretty excited about that, psyched about that.
Dr. Jane, talking about the timeline there, do we think we'll, like this year's ASH 2026 here in December, we'll get more, you know, I don't know, research data coming out of HEMAB Star Therapeutics for von Willebrand's disease? Are we gonna have to wait another year? Is it kind of unknown? What is the, how does the pace, what does the timeline look like?
Amy, we are still learning with the
Mm.
new hemophilia rebalancing therapies, and new information is coming out, you know, every month about certain endpoints, certain, rare side effects, etc. So I am in no rush. I know we all want those therapies for our patients, and but it's coming. I think ASH 2026 will be a good focus point of some real world phase 2 phase 3 data, hopefully like safety analysis and what those numbers, those monitoring parameters would look like in the
Mm.
real world. So it'll be a very fast paced step up. Do we
Mm.
expect these therapies to hit the market by fall of this year? I would, that would be a long shot.
Yeah.
But every step in that direction will bring us closer to where we are in hemophilia, where we have a problem of plenty. of options that are plentiful, right? So,
Yeah.
does that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just, impatient over here, especially for our von Willebrand's patients, wanting them to have, something that's novel and can kind of cut to the chase. But going back to the rebalancing agents, which I just think is fascinating, very complicated science. What in particular about safety and dosage measures came out of ASH? What are the conversations that you all are having? Of course, we had that very um, uh, concerning, troubling news that came out earlier this year about that adverse event, which resulted in a death. Tell us a little bit about rebalancing agents and what's the conversation going on there?
Yeah, again, yeah, I have a way of oversimplifying things just to kind of stay sane, doing hematology overall, and leading the Center of Excellence for sickle disease, thalassemia, gene therapy, and hemophilias as well. I like to simplify things. And the way I am seeing these things, and now this announcement about the fatal outcome in a research study participant in an open label extension studies 3 year into the therapy using successfully for 3 years. The way I see it is we had an age and era of rebalancing therapy before the sentinel event, and we find ourselves now in this post event rebalancing therapy era. The way I used to talk, the way patients used to come, and the discussions and the shared decision making that used to happen before the knowledge of this event look very different than what we are doing since the news broke out. Every single patient on the TFPI antagonist marstacimab that I have, which I think is the largest in the world from any site, I've had one-on-one discussion with every single patient who's been on marstacimab since that news. Someone may argue we're comparing apples to oranges here because this was a clinical trial participant who had inhibitors,
Right.
and this look very different than the real world approval for FDA approval for marstacimab that is for a non-inhibitor patient, and the parallels cannot be drawn between these two cases. But the evolution of science is something that we can get some information out, guiding us as clinicians in the real world. So the way I see it is, this presented an opportunity to have another round of shared decision making. I don't know, mid-year performance analysis, if you may, of patients that have been on therapy, and giving everybody a pause to think about, hey, is this still the right thing to be on versus one of the other alternatives that are available to them. And this has encouraged transparency and given an opportunity to have an open discussion with patients, again because we find ourselves in an age, an era of novel therapies for which we are still learning on a day-to-day basis, their impact on bleeding, their impact on fatigue, their impact on other aspects of hemophilia that we had never thought about before, and were out of the construct of the clinical trials because they have to be robust and have to be focused in maybe one or two primary objectives and secondary objectives. So I think learning this data, and then events like these that give us pause and allow a regrouping, if you may, of patients to kind of decide the path forward, I think it just advances our field at a very critical point where we are building trust and moving forward so that we can continue to have trust with novel therapies. We can continue to support the industry academia partnership that is bringing those therapies from lab to bench or from bench to clinic. But notably, I think MIME-8, the novel molecule data, real world data, the phase 3 data was presented. I think Novo Nordisk is manufacturing an alternative to a bispecific agent that we have needed for a while. For hemophilia A space, we've had Hemlibra, emicizumab with great success.
Right.
I have plenty of patients on it who've loved it as the first ever sub-Q therapy that came to hemophilia. Now those patients will have, an alternative to think about. What is the next step in sub-Q therapies in hemophilia A, bispecific antibodies versus the rebalancing agents, which work differently, but having an alternative to emicizumab now, again in a pen device for the first time. A rebalancing agent, a pen device, we've had three of those. An agent that works like emisusumab, but in a pen device, which makes it convenient. And Novo Nordisk being leaders in developing pen device, whether it was the diabetes uh, drug profile or the Ozempics of the world. I think the technology that has been harnessed, the needle size, the ease of convenience, all of that, along with the safety data that was presented at ASH, I think gave me confidence that hemophilia A patients will have another option, alternative to consider when thinking about uh, um, uh, a pen device for an emisusumab alternative, which is great. Then I think Genentech and Roche that make emisusumab are bringing the next generation NXT 007, they call it, and that's also a pen device, likely hopefully going to be a pen device, but with higher safety and longer half life. Um, so multiple alternatives to emisusumab for hemophilia A's were presented at ASH, and I think that's something to look forward to.
I, I 100% agree. I think it's, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear more from the community about what their questions are when it comes to rebalancing agents. It seems like especially for the community that's middle aged or older. I mean, it's just kind of like a brain readjustment of how you can tackle your bleeding disorder. What are the I mean, it's different on how you treat acutely. So anyway, thank you for that. And I could talk to you probably for 2 hours specifically about that science. But to kind of close and wrap it up, I wanted to just ask you what were you most excited about? What would you love to talk about on this podcast? What, from a nerd perspective, what kind of made you most excited?
Yeah, I mean, I just like you. I live in the world of science and collaborating with colleagues, discussing and creating new opportunities for innovative research. I think one thing that I think, most motivated by from the meeting was how do these fields converge, right? So most people, when they talk about hematology in our world, there are siloed niches. Oh, I'm a hemophilia doctor. Oh, I'm a von Willebrand doctor. Or I'm a sickle cell doctor. And there is not much information exchange or overlap with patient care that happens on a consistent basis with most subspecialists who call themselves hematologists. Now, that is by choice, and that's very important because that focused approach has led to advancement of these fields. I find myself in a very unique position in having to do and having a passion on helping both of these group of patients, sickle cell disease and hemoglobin disorders, not just the United States, but by default when I'm from Asia, where I went to med school, Africa, and here in the United States, where now I call it myself at home. Um, but there are these overlapping fields, clots that develop in patients with sickle cell disease. How does that impact? How do these converging themes with these specialties provide an opportunity to enhance outcomes in patients, not just nationally but globally? Iron deficiency anemia in von Willebrand disease. You have iron specialists and then you have von Willebrand specialists. How do we find opportunities for these fields to converge so we can bring the knowledge of hematology from one to other to impact lives in the real world, right? So having a gene therapy patient who's undergoing gene therapy for sickle cell disease, developing a clot into their central line, just because how nuanced sickle cell disease is, falls in the category of hemostasis and brings to light this complication. Hey, how do we manage clots in somebody who is going through this $3 million therapy? How do we salvage? All these practical questions of real world utilization and creating, leveraging science. So my colleagues, at HTRS, we have a task force that talks specifically around thrombosis and sickle cell disease. An additional topic is pregnancy in sickle cell disease. Yes, we all talk about the pregnancy loss in sickle cell disease, what women go through. Well, why is that the case? And the nuances in thrombosis, microthrombosis, inflammation, and all that. How do we advance science or use strategies that we use in enhancing one disease versus another? Hemophilia, joint health, liver health has impacted gene therapy outcomes in hemophilia. We know that patients who have disease burden from the liver space, whether it's HIV, Hep B, hepatitis C, or fatty liver disease, how does that impact with expensive gene therapy trials or participants that we now are using in patients? So, cross wiring some of these specialties within specialties and bringing this common sense. So, that Ash was pretty great about that because you have stalwarts from all these small niches, under the same roof. So having those discussions and planning the next generation of real world utilization, it's not so much basic science, but how it impacts how we create paradigms, how we create guidelines, I think was really very exciting for me because people are now willing to talk. They're not scared. A sickle cell doctor is not scared about talking to a thrombosis doctor, or having a joint research and understanding what causes what, so we can prevent and impact overall success of all these novel therapies by understanding nuances. I think was my biggest takeaway
Hmm.
uh, from the meeting.
As always, Dr. Jain, thank you so much for joining us here on Bloodstream. It's wonderful to hear your thoughts. And Ash is such an important, complicated, heavy, meeting for a patient to kind of dig through, like, what should we all be looking at? What should the conversations be? And you always make it so digestible and engaging. So thank you so much for joining us on Bloodstream. And we'll have you back next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and say hello to all the folks and the amazing work that you are doing in bringing this advocacy out, because really there is no more powerful discourse that we can do that brings scientific knowledge out to the patient community. So amazing. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, right back at you. Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. Take care. Thanks.
Well, thanks again to Dr. Akshat Jain for joining the program and recapping ASH 2025 with Amy. Thanks as well to our presenting sponsor, Takeda, bleedingdisorders.com. Bleedingdisorders.com. That should roll off the tongue at this point. I have no excuses. We could not produce this show.
Do. No, you do. You've been traveling around the world.
Okay, maybe I do. Maybe this week I do. But we could not produce this show without your support, and we are grateful for it. Bordeaux, our next episode comes out on February 20th. What can the listeners expect to hear?
Well, just like our ASH highlights, we have another, it's seeming to be like an annual ritual at this point. Dr. Glenn Pierce is going to join us to give us a preview of WFH's World Congress, which is going to be in Kuala Lumpur, if I'm correct. Is that correct?
You are correct.
So anyway, that'll be awesome to see, like, what that meeting will be about, some of the things that we can, of course, many of us are not going to be able to go to that meeting. So to hear it here on the podcast will be great. But I do think you and I are going to that meeting.
We are going to be there.
So we might be able to give you guys some tidbits.
Yes, some takeaways and tidbits from the WFH World
Maybe some
Congress.
hot goss. Maybe some hot goss from World Congress.
You're in charge of the hot goss. I'm not,
okay, yes.
I'm not going anywhere near hot goss.
Okay.
I don't trust that at all. Well, and with that, that is all for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Bloodstream podcast wherever you listen to podcasts to have the next episode delivered to you the moment it goes live.
And as always, email us at mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com to inquire about our casting opportunities for both Bloodstream Media and our films, Believe Limited's films. Please also find us on social media. You can find Bloodstream Media also on social media.
You can. It's there. That's true.
It's too many medias.
I am your host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I am your host, Amy Board.
And until next time, take self-care of yourself. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.